After all she's been through, she's trying to make up for what happened to her.
You mean how Wesker brainwashed her and made her come after us? No one's blaming Jill for that.
No one. Except Jill.
Every time they release a new Resident Evil animated movie or miniseries, I'm hopeful that I'll like it, but I'm usually left very disappointed. But now that Resident Evil Death Island is out and I just watched it, I can happily say that I like one of them. I actually like it a lot. Welcome to my channel. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching, I'm gonna let you know that I am a huge Resident Evil fan. I talk about it all the time on this page. I actually talk about survival horror and horror gaming in general quite a bit on this page. So consider subscribing if you're at all interested in that, or if you just want to support a fellow fanatic of the Resident Evil universe. But I also talk about TV shows, movies, and I do trailer reactions. And in this video, I'm going to review Resident Evil Death Island. This is going to be a spoiler-free review. So it's going to be pretty short. I'm just going to talk about the basics, what I liked, what I didn't like, but don't worry, I'm not really going to spoil anything for you. But let me know in the comments if you would like me to upload a spoiler-filled discussion, because if enough people comment that they're interested in that, I will release that later this week at some point. But let's get into Resident Evil Death Island. After Resident Evil Vendetta, which I was so hyped for when that came out, my expectations were lowered drastically for this. I like watching these animated Resident Evil projects for the most part, but oftentimes they're so disappointing, and they often kind of treat a lot of the characters that I love with a lot of disrespect. It's humorous disrespect, but it's still disrespect. In Resident Evil Vendetta, there's a scene where Leon shoots a bunch of wild zombie dogs on the freeway, and as he shoots them, they fall backwards and they blow up a bunch of civilian cars. And Leon smirks and he keeps driving away on his motorcycle, completely careless to the fact that he just in part caused the death of a bunch of civilians. And also in that movie, I'm pretty sure he shoots a rocket launcher through not one, not two, but I think 3 skyscrapers. And I thought this movie was gonna follow suit with what Vendetta did, because very early on in the beginning, Leon is once again on a motorcycle, once again riding on the freeway, and he pulls out his handgun and he opens fire with tons of civilians around him. Luckily that was only in the beginning though, because as this movie progressed, I quickly realized that out of all the Resident Evil animated projects that I've seen, this one seems to be respecting the characters the most. Every single character has at least some sort of character arc. Everyone, including myself, was really excited to see that Jill was part of this movie, but we didn't know how big her role in this movie would be, because she wasn't really focused on in the trailer that much, not nearly as much as Chris, Leon, and Rebecca. A lot of people thought she was just going to have a cameo or just have a small part, but I'm really happy to say that, in my opinion, Jill was arguably the main character in this movie, and her character arc was essentially the central character arc that the main focus of the plot was based off of. They reference events from Resident Evil 5, they reference events from Resident Evil Vendetta, they even reference and show you some flashbacks to the Raccoon City apocalypse. So this movie does do a really good job at making this movie connect to the greater Resident Evil universe. And whether it be Resident Evil Death Island or Resident Evil Vendetta or Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, I'm always surprised at how good this animation actually is. As I'm watching it, the effects, the lighting, everything about it seems way bigger budget than I assume it probably is. However, like Vendetta, like Infinite Darkness, Resident Evil Death Island doesn't really look good when it comes to the humans. I mean, they look like they're good graphics, if you know what I mean, but the way they move, the way that they talk, it's very uncanny valley. It's not very natural. It's almost like an alien piloting a human flesh suit. But once you get a good, 5-10 minutes into the movie, you kind of stop focusing on that and you're just sucked into the plot and the storyline. Even though they brought back a lot of returning voice actors for this, it felt a bit awkward. But again, I will say, as the plot progressed, as the characters started to get more stressed and more emotional towards the back half of this movie, the voice acting did get better. Actually a lot better. There was quite a few action sequences that I really enjoyed. Probably my favorite action sequences in these, again, animated Resident Evil things. The movie could have used with a couple more of them, in my opinion. In fact, I think that this movie would have benefited a lot from being maybe 5 to 10 minutes longer in the back half of it. But that is more or less where the positive things I have to say about the movie end. I don't really have a lot of negatives other than the things that I touched on. The only thing that I can really say in terms of negative is that everything is good, just not great. The whole existence of this movie, at least in my opinion, feels very unneeded. It doesn't really do a lot to elaborate on the overall Resident Evil lore. It doesn't really do anything to set up a future animated movie or a future video game. I consider these animated projects to be optional canon. I know that Capcom and the Resident Evil universe at large does consider these to be canon. They are canon, but in my mind, they're optional canon. They're there if you want to include them, but if you don't want to include them, no harm, no foul. It does feel odd though in my mind that the first time we have a full official team up with Leon, Jill, Chris, Claire, Rebecca is in an animated thing, because I've wanted this for a very, very long time, and it seems weird that they didn't do this in a video game, but instead chose to do it in an animated movie that didn't even get a full theatrical release in the United States. But anyway, that's my spoiler-free thoughts on Resident Evil Death Island. Have you watched it? If you did, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments. Once again, consider subscribing. I talk about Resident Evil all the time, and I just talk about survival horror gaming all the time, but I also talk about movies, TV shows, trailer reactions, that sort of thing. Thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.
Definitely going on vacation after this.